but there was plenty of ugly. So let's go ahead and talk about our last topic of the day. What was ugly out there, Sammy?
You want me to start because this could go a while?
Go ahead. We got time.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with something that we briefly touched on, Utah's punting. Okay, here's the deal. Maybe we've been biased and maybe we've been blessed with the last two punters we've had with Mitch Wishnowsky and Tom Hackett, and they're
the goats of punting.
The goats of punting for Utah. But Benlennon just isn't it. Oh my gosh, it was so bad. His long was 46, and he was averaging 36 yards a punt. That's not good. And also, all of his, I remember one of the punts had, this terrible bounce back, and it gave USC, 5 or 6 yards. I shouldn't be nitpicking on punting, but
no, you should.
But this was an issue last year, too. This was an issue last year, too, and it just hasn't been addressed. And it's like they took a chance with him, and it's not paying off. So I think we've given it a year. Let's move on to Jordan Noyes, and let's go to our second string punter.
Well, there was one, I don't remember when. I think it was third quarter, something like that. And Utah has forced a punt, and they had the ball on the 30-yard line. And he only got it to the 40 of the USC 40.
There was times he didn't even get it. We were in Utah. We would punt in our own territory, and he wouldn't even get it across midfield.
And it's like, okay, I understand that punting is just a different ball game, and there's not as many punters to choose from as there are quarterbacks and running backs and defensive backs and safeties and all that kind of stuff. But I'm like, did this guy just walk into the locker room, put on a uniform, and was like, hey, I kick the balls around here? Like, he just was terrible. I think I've seen more high school punters that can kick further and would have done a better job. And you just, again, you can't. I just felt like the theme last night is Utah was continually setting themselves up for failure. If it wasn't a turnover,
it was a bad
punt.
And not gonna lie,
you can't blame the defense as much as maybe some people would.
Yeah, and it's like, yes, punting's a hard game. He also almost had one blocked, which was a common theme last year too. So, because he holds the ball for too long.
There was 4 or 5 that it was close.
I digress about punting. Well, we can have a whole episode. We can have a whole episode. Just talk about punting for a whole episode because I can't. My other ugly is the quarterbacks.
Oof.
Okay, let's collectively take a deep breath.
We have to start this.
Let it out. Here's the thing. Rising looked good until he didn't. After he threw that
30 seconds.
I would give him a little bit longer.
Okay, 45.
After he threw that interception, that where he clearly overthrew Jordan, he's kind of short. He couldn't jump and get it. And Drake Jackson, I'm pretty sure, Drake London. Yeah. They're a really good defensive player. He grabbed it, and that was the beginning of the end for Rising, in my opinion. And then the following series, he gets strip sacked, he hurts his shoulder, he's out. Okay. Rising had some good moments. He did. He had a couple of good balls up until his injury. But at the same time, I'm just like, dude, you clearly overthrew your running back. You know how tall he is. Be aware of that. But here's the other thing. Bentley, okay, yes, he was thrown into the moment. And we usually know that when a quarterback is thrown into a moment and thrown into the game, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't really end well. And yes, he should have been, he has the SEC experience and stuff like that, and blah, blah, blah. It didn't look like he had the SEC experience last night. And I'm gonna throw this out here. Utah isn't USC. This isn't the same. Utah couldn't do what USC did to Utah last year with Matt Fink and just chucking it up and hoping his wide receivers would come down with it. Because that's what both of his interceptions to me felt like, is he was just chucking it just to get rid of it. Don't do that. He had a 33-yard rush. Also, just throw the ball out of bounds. Throw it away. Throw it away. I would rather us be put in a 2nd and 10 or a 3rd and 10 situation rather than you throwing the ball in an interception and giving it back to USC, who we didn't have answers for last night. But along with that, Utah was playing 3 freshmen on their offensive line last night. So it's not 100% on Bentley or Rising, but it also is on that offensive line because Porter Larson of ESPN 700 mentioned on Twitter that the offensive line was one of the groups that was decimated by COVID when we got hit with it. So you were playing 3 freshmen instead of 3 players who had the experience, and you were lining up against USC with a very stout defensive line. And I don't think that works. That did not work well, and it did not work in our favor. But the last thing that was ugly was just playing a game post-COVID. That's the big elephant in the room right now, I feel, is we knew that the first game wasn't going to be fun, but I didn't think it was going to be this magnitude. Because players, even though they're out of quarantine and stuff like that, and they're testing negative, they're still feeling after effects of this. So you don't know if they're actually fully 100%.
Right. Well, I just could not believe how it just seemed to get worse and worse and worse and worse as the night went on. But when you commit 5 turnovers, you are not going to win a game.
No.
The 3 interceptions were just poor decisions on that of the quarterbacks. Bentley kept throwing into double coverage, and it was driving me nuts.
Because they were double covering Keithy.
And it's like, what did you see? What were you looking at down there that made you think this is a good idea? I can understand if it's one-on-one down the field and you just want to take a shot. There's probably not a great chance that ball is going to get picked off because you're either going to overthrow or underthrow or somebody's going to knock the ball down. But when it is double coverage, and it wasn't even close, both the interceptions, it was like, who are you throwing to?
That's
and
the last. Okay,
one,
I will. Here's his second interception. I will say it was the last play of the game, so it wasn't like
he threw into triple coverage.
He threw into triple coverage in that moment, but at that point, we all knew the game was over.
Yeah.
So I was like, whatever. If that one's, I'm not really counting that one as ooh.
It wasn't costly. The game was already over.
Costly, yeah. But the one, the double coverage.
That was just ugly. So
it was painful.
Yeah, Bentley just looked rusty. It's like he hasn't played football in a couple of years, and
he hasn't.
Right? And it was very telling last night. And it's difficult because looking at some of his numbers, they were pretty dang good when he was at South Carolina, but just looked so bad, and you could tell clearly that he has very little chemistry with any of those receivers.
But also, he wasn't taking the reps with the ones this week.
True.
This week, he probably will be. So maybe things will be different this week.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's just how much – there's only so much he can do.
Yeah. And then my thoughts on Rising are, I was on the Bentley train the entire offseason. I really thought it was going to be him. Well, yeah. I mean, you bring in an SEC transfer, and he's a senior. Why would he commit if he's not going to play? But going beyond that, once I found out it was Rising, and we have kind of thought that it was going to be Rising for a couple weeks until it was truly confirmed. What excited me was, okay, Rising must be dang good because he beat out an SEC transfer quarterback with a lot of experience. Mm-hmm. And he did look good in that first drive. I was really impressed. I was like, okay, I'm not worried. He's going to be good. He's young. We're going to have him for a couple years. This should be great. And then his nerves kind of started to take over. He overthrew on that interception, fumbled, he got hurt, and I don't know when he's coming back.
We'll don't know.
Yeah. But continuing and just trying to wrap things up here a little bit. Overall, the quarterback situation makes me really nervous for the Utes going forward. Bentley was 16-28, had 171 yards. As we touched on before, continuously missing his targets, overthrowing, throwing into double coverage, 2 interceptions. But with that injury, he's probably the guy going forward. Now, the last thing I want to point out really quickly, which I thought was hideous, is our top receivers didn't see enough of the ball. Thompson, 2 receptions for 48 yards. Ennis, 3 receptions for 42 yards. Nakua, 3 for 29. And Keithy, 4 for 23 yards. Are you kidding me?
You need
Why
to get the ball.
are you disrespecting my man and not giving him the football?
You need to get the ball in Keithy's hands. You need to get the ball in Keithy's hands. You need to get the ball in Kincaid's hands. You need to get the ball in Thompson's hands, and you need to get the ball in Nakua's hands. So
Absolutely.
Solo looked really good last night. I will say that Solo looked really good, and I am excited to see what he does this season.
And I did notice, I felt like they were double teaming Keithy,
which was leaving people open.
Yeah, it was, but
and they didn't.
And with the amount of turnovers and interceptions, it's going to limit your offensive possession. But interestingly enough, looking at the amount of time, it was like the Trojans had like 30 minutes of possession with like a handful of seconds, and then obviously that left the other for the Utes. It was like less than a minute difference.
Mm-hmm. Because we were rushing too much. We were we were leaning on the run game.
Yeah. So overall, Sammy, Utah football was back. I'll take it.
It was messy.
It was messy, but we expected it to be messy. We talked about that several times. The good, the bad, the ugly. Take it for what you will. Take it for what you want. Let's just focus on the good, and let's hope that next week we're playing ASU on Sunday.
Let's hope we're playing.
I don't know that we will, but let's hope we are. But unfortunately, guys, that is all the time we have for today. We want to thank everyone for following us today here on Ute Dash. Just a reminder, we have collaborated with Sports Pac-12. We can find shows, articles, lots of good content. Be sure to follow them at Sports Pac-12 and on their website, sportspac12.com. In addition, please don't forget to check us out on dashsports.tv. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at dashsportstv. Thanks again. Sammy, thank you. Hopefully, again, we'll be seeing some more Utah football and some better Utah football. But as always, Sammy, go Utes.
Go Utes, guys.